This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you just a few thoughts. We covered, towards the beginning of the new Zman. It's, I'm sure, quite a different Zman than we're used to. Usually we're all in the Beis HaMedrash, and the situation certainly is itself to Hasmada and Amelos, and now we're confronted with a very different set of circumstances. But Torah is b'shivtecha b'veisecha, v'lachtecha v'adarach, whatever circumstance we're in, just like we breathe, no matter what position we're in, so the Torah is kihem chayenu. So wherever we may be, the Torah accompanies us. Just to share a few brief ideas and thoughts, perhaps for chizuk in Limud Torah, and mamish dvarim pshutim ad ma'od. This is all information that we're familiar with and we know very well. But the more we review over what we already know, so the deeper it becomes in our minds, in our hearts. So everybody knows that Chachmas HaTorah is different than any other Chachma. Obviously, Torah is the das Elokus. The Torah is the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore the principles that guide learning Torah are different than any other discipline. Lahavdil, when somebody's learning math, so one would say that if somebody is smart and they have the intellectual acumen, if somebody has the yichud, the kishroinos, so they'll be successful. But it's not so in Torah. In other words, I remember there were Bachrim, my age group, who were very smart, had tremendous kishroinos, and they were not matzliach in learning. And lehepuch, you had Bachrim who were average kishroin, below average kishroin, and they turned out to be very successful. So just let's focus on some of the key ingredients in being matzliach in learning, and from there we'll get a deeper appreciation for how Torah is different than any other chachma. So first of all, we know the Mishnah says in Perkei Avos, the Mishnah says aseh lecha Rab. Okay, so you have to have a Rabbi. You have to make for yourself a Rabbi. Rabbi Yonah wants to know, why do you have to make a Rebbe? He's your Rebbe, I came to the Yeshiva, he's my Rebbe. What does it mean I have to make myself a Rebbe? The first Rabbi Yonah says a very important idea. He says, Rabbi Yonah, a Rebbe is not someone who has to know more than you. Even if he knows exactly what you know, you make him your Rebbe. In other words, you have to be machniya to the Rebbe. You have to humble yourself before the Rebbe. If you don't humble yourself before the Rebbe, if you don't, in your mind, appoint him that this is my Rebbe, then you're not going to learn from him. And why is it so important to learn from a Rebbe? I have Sfarim, Gavaldig Sfarim today. Every year, there's so many new Sfarim that come out that I always wonder, how did they learn the year before? When I was in Beis Medrash, I used to have something called regular Gemaras. Now you have Oiz V'Hadar. Now I don't know if I'm going to say, they have the Mesifta Gemara. I don't know if you're allowed to use it. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. But they have so many tools. Even a Rabbi Kiva Eger, the print is so nice and the footnotes are so nice. It's mamish a machaya. So why do I need a Rebbe? Everything is mamish. The Hezber is I could get Hezber for everything, for every Rashi, for every Taisus, for every line in Rabbi Kiva Eger. Soon they're going to have biurim on the Baruch Star. Why do I need a Rebbe? So Rabbi Yonah says, "V'nei she'adam zoicher mashalamad me'rabbi yoisar mi'masha'adam loy me'id me'atzmai." A person remembers what he learns from a Rebbe more than what he learns on his own. But I don't think Rabbi Yonah just means a person remembers. The impact that Torah makes on a person from what you learn from a Rebbe is much deeper than when you learn on your own. That's the way it is. We're human beings, and if you just see something in print, okay, you'll know the information, but the purpose of Torah is not just to know the information. The purpose of Torah is that it should enter your heart. It should become part of your personality. It should become part of who you are. So for the Torah to make an impact on you, for the Torah to change you, We don't want just the Torah to be in our minds. We want it to be coursing through our veins. It should become part of us. So in order for it to become part of us, the way it assimilates into a person's heart, into a person's mind, into a person's whole being is through, from a Rabbi to a Talmud. You know, nowadays, unfortunately, they're yeshivas. The Rebbe comes in and gives a share klali, and people walk out. But that's people are not going to be matzliach that way. The person's only matzliach. You have to learn from a Rebbe. You have to be, you know, when the shir is over, you have to follow the Rebbe. You have to ask him, what did the Rebbe mean? What was the Rebbe's point? Why did the Rebbe say it this way? Because when you have a relationship with the Rebbe, it's going to impact you more. Now, it's not like this when you learn math or anything else. Any other branch of information. So you know the information, you know it. And if you don't know it, you don't know it. You don't have to have a teacher. If you can figure it out on your own, then you also know it. But Torah doesn't work that way. Torah is very different. The way the kinyan of Torah is al yedei a Rebbe. Okay, so that's just one very pashut illustration. Here's another nekuda. Just barmish dvarim pshutim. We know the Mishnah says in Avos, in Parak Vav, that Torah is niknes be memches derachim. And one of the ways to be kind of Torah, the third way is arichas sefasayim. If you say the words. The Gemara in Eruvin says that Bruria, the wife of a mayor, found a certain Talmud, and he was learning quietly, and she kicked him. She said, what do you mean? The Torah says, Arucha bakol shmura, that the Torah will only be successful if it's arucha, if it's arranged in all 248 Evarim. The Marshal explains, what does that have to do with saying the words? Marshal says an interesting thing, that when a person says the words, it causes certain vibrations. When you say words, it causes, sound waves. The whole body vibrates. Only when you learn with all 248 Evarim, which is when you say the words, is the Torah remembered. If you don't say it, then you're not kind of the Torah. You easily forget it. Right? Like, it's even Paskin and Shulchan Aruch in Yardis and Reish Mevav. It says, Kol hamashmiya koilo b'shas talmudai, miskayim biyadai. Aval hakore b'lachash, b'mehira hu shechech. So it's not just, Musar and Periyot Halacha and Shulchan Aruch. Ad kidei kach, that the Shulchan Aruch Harav paskins that if somebody is learning to themselves and they don't say the words, they're not yotzei the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. You hear this? You could be sitting in the Beis Medrash, you could be learning 14 hours, you could learn a Masechta, and you don't get schar not for one word. It's passed in the Shulchan Aruch Harav. Because he says, Kamay b'chol mitzvah satzulis b'dibur, she'ena yotzei nidei chavasa b'hirer. Elam kin shemea. So he's bothered by a kasha. Because he says, Eino yoytze b'limud zeh, yidei chavas mitzvah, v'limadet ha'maisa. So what do you do if you're learning with a chavrusa? So now both chavrusas have to say over together. It's pretty disturbing. It's pretty distracting. The both chavrusas have to say. He says, no. One says it, the other one is shemea koina. The lamdus is when my chavrusa is saying, or when the Rebbe's saying, so he's saying, and I'm listening, or you could, whatever the lamdus is, whether the Beis Halevi or the Chazon Ish, however you want to say it, the lamdus is shemea koina. He says though that if it's something that is like darkei ha'iyun, and it's gonna disturb your analysis, it's gonna be hard to think deeply, then you don't have to say it. But in general, he says, if you don't say the words, you're not yotzei. Now, Rosh Zalman argues. Rosh Zalman says that this din of Shulchan Aruch Harav is a chiddush gadol, and he says it's not. We don't paskin that way. And he says if you don't say the words, you're yotzei. And he says when your chavrusa says the other chavrusa, it's not the pshat that he's yotzei through shemea ka'ina. He says that's the tzura of learning. One person says and the other person listens. But everybody agrees that the difference between the bacha, the difference between somebody who says the words and someone who doesn't say the words, it's a tremendous difference. There's a haftacha that kol hamashmiya koiloi b'shas talmudai miskayim biyadai. I highly doubt that this applies by other subjects. Now, if somebody's learning lahavdil, a different subject, and we can say, the person who's saying it over, it's going to make a big difference to his havana or his memory. No, it's a skula dika thing. Torah is not a regular chachma, it's chachma elokis, and therefore the rules and the ways of being kaina'it are l'mala min hateva. So if somebody says the words, it's a skula dika kinyan of how somebody could get a deeper understanding, a deeper memory of Torah. Another interesting thing, the Gemara says in Bava Basra, Daf Yoram and Beis, Ashrei mi shabalakan v'talmudai bi'adai. Fortunate is someone who goes upstairs, and he has his Torah in his hands. Literally, he knows the stuff. He's klar. He remembers. He knows. He understands. But the Marsha says an interesting pshat. The Marsha says, Iker halimud shenasa b'ay roishem tu halimud haba miksivas yad. The Iker learning that makes a roishem on a person, that penetrates a person's heart, that gets into your soul, that gets into your blood, is when you write it over. That's why Chachamim are called Seifrim. So here also we see that it's a very interesting thing that for a person to be successful in learning, you want to involve as many parts of the guf as possible. You want to say the words with your mouth. You want to see the Rebbe. You want to get your hand writing the material. The more ivarim of the guf that are involved in the mitzvah, the more it becomes part of you. It's interesting. The Marsha doesn't say you're going to remember the learning better. The Marsha doesn't even say you're going to understand it better. She says it's going to make a roishem. It's going to get deeper inside of you. It's going to become more part of you if you write it over. So these are all techniques, kinyanim, that, perhaps we underestimate. But according to Chazal, they make a very big difference. Someone who writes over, you have Chazor Sashir. Someone who writes over the Nekudos of the Shir, his learning is going to be much deeper in his ways, much deeper in his personality. He's going to become more makusha to the Torah than someone who just says it. Someone who sees it from the Rebbe is going to be more makusha. Someone who says the words is going to have a deeper kasha to the Torah. Okay. Maybe two more nekudas. Mamish dvarim pshutim. If I'm sure everybody knows it, and you're doing me a chesed, I could just say it over. Moshe kibel Torah misinai. Literally, Moshe accepted the Torah from Sinai. It's not true, sheker v'chazav. Moshe did not receive the Torah from Sinai. Sinai did not grow arms and hand the Torah to Moshe. Moshe kibel Torah me HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does it mean, mi Sinai? It should say bis Sinai. So Tosfos on the Mishnah, Tosfos Chadashim asks Kasha. What do you mean Moshe kibel Torah mi Sinai? Let's say Moshe was standing at Har Sinai. He certainly did not get the Torah from Sinai. So Tosfos says like this. Mem, it's a mem hagoyrem. It's like in the pasuk mechatas. Mem could sometimes mean because of. Moshe was makabel the Torah because of Sinai, because of the limud that Moshe learned from Sinai. Moshe was makabel the Torah. What was the limud? The limud was the limud of Anivas. The Gemara says in Megillah that Torah always flows down to its lowest point. Actually, it's Gemara in Tainus. The Gemara says, Nimshala devar Torah l'mayim. The mayim is maniach hamakom gavai, and it goes down to the lowest point. Water will always flow down to the lowest point. Torah will only stay will only be in the skayim, in the das, in the mind of someone who is humble. The Nefesh HaChaim explains in Shar Aleph, Parak Aleph, Mamish in the beginning. It says, I'll read to you his words, Al Yedei Ha'anava Zoicha Ha'adam Hakra. Through Anivos, a person is Zoicha to everything. All milos, all madregos, all levels, all achievements in Avodas Hashem only comes through Anava. Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest Navi who ever lived. The Nefesh Chaim says he was the greatest Chacham who ever lived. Rabbeinu Yoina writes, the same way Moshe was the greatest Navi and the greatest Chacham, he was the greatest everything that ever was. He was the greatest Lamdin. He was the greatest Masmid. He was the greatest Bal Kishron. He was the greatest Bal Hezber. He was the greatest everything. Any attribute you name in Ruchnius, Moshe had it. And yet, says the Nefesh Chaim, Moshe was only praising his Anivos. You know why? Because all the other things he had was only because he was the greatest Anav. Now, ready for this? Says the Nefesh Chaim, Ilu haya achshav adam Anav ke Moshe, haya vadai zoicha l'Torah b'shleimos. If we could find someone who could match Moshe's Anivos, then he would also have Torah like Moshe. So this Indian that no one will ever be as great as Moshe is because nobody could ever be as great of an Anav as Moshe. Says in Nefesh HaChaim, the mashal is like a kli. You have a kli. The thicker the walls are, the less you can put into it. So here you have a guy, he's a choshev bacher, he's top stuff, he's mamish, a metzuyin dika guy, mamish abal kishran. The only thing is, he is a stick abal gaivanik. So the Rabbi says a svara, and he's thinking to himself, yeah, I thought of that in Hachana. I thought of that in the beginning. I already know that svara. The Rabbi says a kash, I know that. So very good. He'll be good in learning, but he won't be great in learning. Because he's not an onav. When the Rebbe says a svara, he says, yeah, I thought of something similar, but maybe the Rebbe will say it sharper, maybe the Rebbe will say it a little bit more clear, because at the end of the day, ma'ani or ma'chayai, so the person will humble himself. Then there's more room, he could be a greater kli kibul for the Torah. A person who has an attitude, I know this, I heard this, I heard this, my Rebbe, but there's a more chashuv Rebbe somewhere else. Or, I think I could figure this out on my own. Somebody who has ego, there's not so much space to put the Torah doesn't fit. Says the Nefesh HaChaim, Komash Dafna Yoiser Dak Machzik Yoiser. The thinner the walls of the kli, the more it holds. Ad she'im tia keklipas hashum. If the walls were thin like the shell of a garlic, it would come out kula beis kibel. Then the whole kli would be a receptacle. Kein ha'adam kol sharucha yoiser namach nishar beyoiser makam panoi ubeis kibel atara. The more humble a person is, the more of a receptacle he'll be for Torah. You'll see, in 10 years, it's not going to be the smartest who are going to be the most matzliach in learning. Sometimes you can have someone who's mamish on the bottom in Kishrayim. But he's a bigger anav. Maybe he'll have a Rebbe. He'll realize he can't be soymech on his chachma. He'll say the words. He can't be soymech on his chachma. He'll chazer more. He'll be more matzliach. He's going to be a bigger base kibul. In math, it makes no difference. You could be a balgaiva, you could have a big ego, you could be an anav. Either you're smart, you'll get it. If you're not smart, you won't get it. Torah is not math, lahavdil. Elef alpei avdos. Torah is chachmas elekis. The rules of being matzliach in Torah have no connection to anything that a person would think of al pi seichel. And of course, we'll just end with this. The Gemara says in Brachos Daf Ches. The Gemara is talking about a pasuk in Tehillim. David HaMelech says, Al zois yispalel kol chassid elecha le'es mitzay. For this, every chassid, every pious person, every person of chasidus should daven. In other words, David HaMelech is saying that even though we have to daven for everything. I remember when I was a bacher, I used to talk to Harav Victor Miller, who's at the Taz of Bracha. So I wanted to ask him, why do we daven? Why do we have to daven for Olam Haba? I have to daven for Allah, do mitzvahs, and you'll get it. Well, we mean daven for it. I remember he said, because you don't get anything ever unless you daven for it. So you have to daven for everything. But David HaMelech says, Al zois yispalel. Daven for this, meaning, for this you have to put in more effort and tefillah than anything else. And Taka the Gemara gives different perushim. What is the this that you need to daven for? But one of the Amoram says the this that you need to daven for is Torah. That means more than anything else, in other words, more than Parnasa, more than a Shidduch, more than Refuah, you have to daven for Torah. What do I have to daven for Torah? I learn 14 hours a day. I say the words. I have the best Rebbe in the world. I chazer everything I learn. I'm mamish and onav like Moshe Rabbeinu. Why do I have to daven? if I'm a masmid and I'm an onav, why do I have to daven? Because at the end of the day, your mind is basar v'dam, and the Torah is das Elokim, and it's a nes. The Chassam Sofer writes, it's a nes if you can remember one word. It's a nes to know Torah. Torah is the dasa of Hashem. It doesn't even. It's not oila ala seichel that a mind of basar v'dam could know Torah. So with all the ingredients, with all the anivos, and with all the arichas shefasayim and asei l'charav and all the 48 kinyanim, you need more than anything else. You need siyata d'shmaya. More siyata. This guy is a choyle mesukan. You're telling me we need more tefillos for Torah than for refuah? That's right. It's a bigger nest to be matzliach in Torah than anything else in this world. And therefore, Rav Nosson says, Le'es mitzvah, zu Torah. So we should taka b'zoicha. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time. We should be zoicha to utilize all the kinyanei haTorah, and Hashem should give us all siyata shmaya to grow in Torah, in avoda, in yira, lamala. Shkayach everyone. Bracha v'atzlacha. Great siyata shmaya. And thanks for listening.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.